He texted me last night, just 5 words. Do you ever think about me? I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I used to beg for his attention, and now I don't even miss him. Not the way he hopes. Not since I found out who he really was. Not since the lies, the silence, and the nights he said he was working late. So no, I don't think about him. At least not the way he remembers me. I remember the exact moment I stopped breathing, not physically, but emotionally. You know that feeling when your chest tightens so suddenly that even the air feels sharp, like it's cutting into you? That was me, on a random Thursday afternoon, in my own home, wearing pajamas, holding a lukewarm cup of tea that had long lost its comfort. Matt had left his work iPad on the kitchen counter, screen still on, battery clinging to 7%. I wasn't snooping. I swear. I was just cleaning up like I always did. But the screen lit up when I moved it. One of those banner notifications popped up, innocent at first glance. Kendra, still thinking about last night. Kendra, his coworker. The one he always called his work wife, like it was some harmless inside joke. Like it was funny. Like it didn't sting every time he said it. I didn't plan to look. I really didn't. But you know how curiosity works when you've already been suspecting something deep in your gut? That voice you keep trying to silence that whispers, something's not right. So I opened the message thread. The first few texts were nothing. Just jokes, memes, project updates, then some flirty emojis that felt a little too familiar. And then, the tone shifted. I dreamed about you again. Can't believe we haven't been caught. You know if she ever finds out, I'll lie. You're worth it. I froze. That line replayed in my head like it was tattooed behind my eyes. If she ever finds out, I'll lie. You're worth it. I don't know how long I stood there. Might have been 2 minutes. Might have been 20. The tea had gone completely cold by the time I finally set the iPad down and walked to the living room like I was in a trance. You never expect betrayal to arrive in high definition. You think it's whispers in the dark, lipstick on collars, or late-night phone calls. But for me, it was a glowing screen and a stupid red heart emoji. Matt came home around 7 p.m. that night. I greeted him like nothing had happened. Like my entire understanding of our marriage hadn't just shattered in the span of 30 minutes. I smiled. I asked how his day went. I laughed at his jokes. Because I wasn't ready. Not yet. You see, when someone stabs you in the back, your first instinct shouldn't be to scream. It should be to listen. That night, I lay next to him in bed while he scrolled through Reddit, smiling like a man with no secrets. He turned over, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "You're my person, sophomore. Always have been." I whispered it back. Because I had to. Because I needed a little more time. Because the story wasn't finished yet. I think the worst part of betrayal isn't the actual lie. It's the performance. The way someone can look you in the eyes with all the tenderness in the world, tuck your hair behind your ear, and tell you they love you, while hiding someone else in their phone, their heart, maybe even their bed. The next morning, I woke up before Matt. His arm was flung over my waist like it belonged there. I stared at the ceiling, counting slow breaths. I didn't pull away. I didn't cry. I was collecting data now. I started watching him differently. I noted every time his phone vibrated and he turned it face down. Every, "I've got to take this," and back in 5, that lasted 20. I smiled through it all like a well-trained actress, playing the role of loving wife with award-worthy precision. And the more I watched, the more I realized, this wasn't new. It hadn't started last week or last month. This thing between him and Kendra had roots. Inside jokes I'd heard about months ago. Late-night meetings I'd brushed off. The way he started dressing nicer for work. Using cologne, even though he said no one in the office cared. I'd believed him. God, I had believed every word. That Saturday, we had dinner with friends. A double date. Us and our longtime neighbors, Ellie and James. And I saw it. For the first time, I really saw it. Matt wasn't himself anymore. He wasn't sitting next to me like he used to. He wasn't squeezing my thigh under the table when he laughed. He was leaning back in his chair, telling some story I'd already heard a dozen times. But this time his eyes weren't on me. They were watching how everyone else reacted, how funny he sounded, how charming he seemed. That used to be our thing. Shared glances across crowded rooms, knowing exactly what the other was thinking. But now, he didn't look at me once. On Sunday, he went out for a run. He came back sweaty, panting, even tossed his shoes into the hallway like a teenager. But there was no run on his Apple Watch. No miles logged. Just a gap in time. A window of absence. He was getting sloppy. I never asked where he went. I didn't want to lie. I wasn't collecting lies. I was collecting patterns. I spent my evenings alone on the couch, scrolling through old photos of us on my phone, smiling at memories that now felt counterfeit. And with every picture I stared at, I whispered to myself the same thing. You are not crazy. You are not overreacting. You are not imagining this. I started copying things, screenshots of texts, syncing his iCloud to my desktop. I wasn't looking to trap him. I was looking for the truth. The raw, ugly, undeniable truth. And then one night, I found it. An email. From Matt to Kendra. The subject line was blank. The body was short. But it said everything I needed to know. She suspects nothing. But I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. I want to be with you. Just give me time. There it was. My marriage. A footnote in someone else's love story. It's strange how calm you can feel when your world is falling apart. After reading that email, I didn't throw things. I didn't scream. I didn't wake Matt up and confront him with all the rage in my chest. No, I just stared at the screen for a while. Then I quietly closed the laptop, turned off the light, and went to bed. I curled up next to him like nothing had changed, even though everything had. His breathing was steady, peaceful. He was dreaming, probably of her. Of Kendra, the woman he was willing to lie for. Risk it all for. I watched him sleep and thought, you really have no idea, do you? The next morning, I made him coffee. His usual, black, 1 sugar. He kissed my cheek and told me I was amazing. I smiled, told him he better get to work, wouldn't want to be late. He left without even realizing he'd kissed a woman who was now documenting his every move. And I kept going. I kept pretending. Because here's the thing. When you know the truth, you have all the power. And I wasn't ready to use it yet. Not until I understood everything. Not until I could flip the entire script in one clean motion. So I dug deeper. I found a second email. This one was older. From 2 months before. I dream about us in our own place. No secrets. No pretending. I'll tell her soon. After her birthday. That email was dated 2 weeks before my birthday dinner. The one where he gave me that handwritten letter about how I was his rock and the only woman he could imagine growing old with. The same dinner where he held my hand across the table and told our friends we were stronger than ever. I'd cried when I read that letter. And the whole time, he had already written her. He was going to leave me after my birthday. But he didn't. And now I knew why. A line from her reply. I'm not ready to be that woman yet, Matt. I don't want to break up a marriage. I want to be the choice, not the escape. So she backed off. Not out of decency. Out of fear. And Matt. He stayed. Not because he loved me, but because she told him no. That was when something inside me shifted. I realized I was living in a script someone else had written, waiting for them to decide my ending. And that's when I began writing my own. People think revenge is loud. A screaming match. A thrown drink. A dramatic exit with a suitcase in one hand and dignity in the other. But real revenge? The kind that lingers? It's quiet. It walks in silence. It smiles while you're speaking. It sharpens itself in the dark until the timing is perfect. And I was getting close. The thing is, once you stop seeing someone through the lens of love, you start to notice everything they've ever done to chip away at you. Not just the cheating, but the little digs. The subtle put-downs. The way they rewrite history to make you feel small for remembering it accurately. Matt had a way of making me feel crazy without ever raising his voice. Babe, that's not what I said. You're reading too much into things. Why are you always so emotional about everything? He was always the calm one, the reasonable one. While I felt like I was holding on to scraps, trying to prove my reality even existed. But now, I had receipts. I had the whole damn paper trail. And suddenly, his calmness looked a lot more like calculation. So I started shifting. Subtly. I stopped reacting to his moods. I started going out more little things. Late yoga. Coffee with friends I hadn't seen in months. I even planned a solo weekend retreat in the mountains. Matt barely blinked. He was too wrapped up in juggling me and Kendra, thinking he was getting away with it. I wanted him comfortable, lazy, unaware, because when I finally moved, I wanted it to shatter him. That weekend in the mountains, it wasn't for reflection. It was for research. I met with a divorce attorney. A good one. Someone who didn't flinch when I pulled out the file folder filled with emails, texts, screenshots, timelines. Someone who understood the difference between hurt and strategic. We sat across from each other at a small coffee shop tucked behind a bookstore, and after I explained everything, she looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You've already done most of the work. You're not looking for advice. You're looking for permission." And she was right. I just needed someone to say, "Yes, you're not crazy. Yes, this matters. Yes, it's okay to walk away even if he says he still loves you." Especially then. So I said it out loud for the first time. I'm going to leave him, but on my terms. And just like that, it stopped being a thought and became a decision. The kind you build your next life around. When I got home from that weekend retreat, I walked through the door like nothing had changed. Matt was on the couch, game controller in hand, a half-eaten bag of chips beside him. He looked up and smiled. "You're back early." I kissed his cheek and said, "Missed you." And for a moment, I almost pitied him, because he really had no idea. No idea that while he was sitting there in his comfort, I had already opened a separate bank account, that I had taken inventory of every asset, every password, every shared liability. No idea that I had a file on my desktop labeled innocently as vacation plans that held his entire digital betrayal. I wasn't leaving with tears in my eyes. I was leaving with a plan, and plans require patience. Over the next few weeks, I moved through our life like a ghost who knew the ending. I smiled through dinners. I let him kiss me goodnight. I even agreed to attend a dinner party with Kendra present. Yes, that Kendra. It was a work thing. Matt's firm was hosting an open house, inviting clients and partners. I wasn't even sure why he wanted me there. Guilt? Appearances? Maybe he thought I still had no clue. I wore red that night. Not because I needed his attention, but because I knew I'd walk into that room and own every inch of it. I greeted people like I belonged there. Smiled at Kendra like we were old friends. And when she looked at me, I saw it. Guilt, fear, and something else, confusion. I wasn't supposed to be this calm, this collected, this unbothered. Matt kept glancing between us all evening, like he sensed something but couldn't name it. Like he knew the ground had shifted but hadn't figured out where the crack was. By the end of the night, I leaned in and whispered in his ear, "I'm really proud of you tonight." And I meant it, because the man had no idea the walls were closing in. The following morning, I moved the first batch of funds. Just enough to start. I paid the deposit on a small apartment across town, 1 bedroom, clean lines, lots of light. I also emailed the divorce lawyer the green light. The papers would be drawn up and served within 2 weeks. And as for the final act, that came on a Wednesday night. He came home from work, loosened his tie, and said, "I think I'm going to grab drinks with a few coworkers." "Which coworkers?" I asked, not even bothering to sound interested. He hesitated, then said her name, Kendra. The way he looked at me after, like he was testing how far he could push this lie, it made my blood go cold. I nodded. "Have fun." He left by 7 o'clock, and by 7:30, I was gone too. I left behind my key, my wedding ring, and a letter that simply read, "I knew." For months. And I stayed long enough to choose my exit. You'll hear from my lawyer soon. I won't be coming back. Then I walked out with nothing but a weekend bag and my freedom. No screaming. No final scene. Just silence. The kind that echoes. The first night in my new apartment felt weightless. It wasn't big. There were boxes everywhere. The fridge held nothing but sparkling water and leftover Thai. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for someone to come home. I wasn't checking my phone to decode the tone of a message. I wasn't walking on eggshells in my own skin. I was just me. And that was enough. Matt didn't call that night. Not because he didn't notice. I know he noticed. But because he was probably still in shock. I imagine he came home, tossed his keys on the counter, maybe even whistled to himself. And then saw the letter. Saw the empty closet. Saw the wedding ring sitting there like a quiet bullet. I wonder how long he stood in that doorway. I wonder what he told Kendra. I didn't check. I blocked them both that night. Not out of anger. Out of peace. Some people don't deserve front row seats to your healing. The next day, the lawyer confirmed the papers had been delivered. Matt hadn't responded. That wasn't a surprise. He was never great with consequences. He liked living in the land of what they don't know won't hurt them. But I knew. And I was done hurting. Friends started texting. People I hadn't heard from in weeks suddenly had a feeling something was going on. I didn't tell them much. Just that we were separating and I was safe. That was enough. The whispers would come. They always do. But this time, I didn't care. I wasn't trying to control the story. I was reclaiming my role in it. And the wildest thing? I felt stronger than I ever had. Because I didn't need revenge. Not really. I didn't need to slash tires or post screenshots or make scenes. All I had to do was leave. Let him sit in the silence he created. Let him face the version of himself that wasn't propped up by my loyalty, my forgiveness, my blind hope. Let him realize that the woman he underestimated, she didn't break. She rebuilt. A week passed. No calls. No emails. No flowers mysteriously showing up at my new place like some tired apology wrapped in cellophane. Matt had gone completely silent. And I knew exactly why. See, for someone like him, silence isn't a response, it's a strategy. He thought ignoring the situation would somehow reset it. Like if he stayed quiet long enough, I'd come crawling back, emotional and confused, begging for answers. But that wasn't going to happen. Because I didn't need his answers. I had mine. Still, it's funny how grief sneaks up on you. Not grief for the relationship, but for the version of yourself who kept trying to save it. One night, I was folding laundry and found an old hoodie of his buried in the bottom of a box. It still smelled like the cologne he wore. The same scent I once found comforting. I held it for a second, then dropped it straight into the donation pile. Because nostalgia is a liar. It romanticizes people who hurt you, dresses up the pain in soft lighting and background music and asks, was it really that bad? Yes, it was. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't dramatic. I was aware. And that awareness kept growing. One afternoon, I got a call from my lawyer. Matt had finally responded. His lawyer had questions about the financial disclosures, the timeline of our separation, the evidence I had collected. They were trying to feel me out, trying to gauge how much I really knew. And my lawyer? She was a queen. She sent over a folder so thick it could have been used as a doorstop, including timestamps, transaction records, and more than a few names that Matt probably wished I didn't have on file. That's when things shifted. Suddenly, Matt was very interested in talking it out. He emailed me directly. Can we please meet in person? Just to talk. No pressure. I stared at the message for a full minute before deleting it. No pressure? He should have thought of that before inviting someone else into our marriage. He messaged again the next day, then the next, each one softer, more apologetic, less smug. I messed up. We were falling apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. I miss you. Funny how they never miss you until they lose access to the version of you who made their life easier. But what broke me wasn't the messages. It was what happened next. A friend of a friend, someone I barely knew, DM'd me on Instagram. They worked in the same office as Kendra, and apparently, she was no longer with the company. Rumors had been swirling. People had seen Matt and Kendra in his car after hours. There had been a blow-up. HR got involved. Someone filed a complaint. I didn't ask for the details. I didn't need them. The only thing I felt was this strange, bittersweet satisfaction. Not because she was gone, but because the truth always finds its way out. No matter how polished the lie. The irony is, I never wanted this to be ugly. I didn't want to ruin him. I didn't want revenge. What I wanted, deep down, was something far more complicated. I wanted to matter. Not just as someone's wife. Not just as the woman who folded the laundry and made the doctor's appointments and remembered his mom's birthday when he always forgot. But as a person, a whole one, with thoughts, with feelings, with needs he couldn't ignore or laugh off. Instead, he gave his attention to someone else, someone new, someone convenient. And when it all came crashing down, he ran back to me with open hands and empty promises. I didn't respond to his emails, but I read them. Every single one. There were over 20 by the time I stopped counting. Some were long and rambling, full of regret and sad metaphors. Others were just a single sentence. I still love you. This doesn't feel real. Please let's talk. And yet, not once did he say the thing I was waiting to hear. I understand why you left. Because he didn't. He still thought this was about the cheating. It wasn't. It was about every small moment before that. The dismissive tone, the way he always made me feel like the dramatic one, the subtle gaslighting, the empty anniversaries, the way he never listened unless I was crying. The affair was just the final crack. The vase had been breaking for years. One Sunday morning, I went to a local cafe. I sat at a corner table with a notebook and just wrote. No plan, no filters. Just feelings I hadn't let myself speak out loud. I wrote about the first time I noticed him pulling away. The first time he didn't say, I love you back. The time I caught him texting late at night, and he brushed it off like I was the paranoid one. And then I wrote a letter. Not to him. To me. To the version of me who thought love meant endurance. Who thought loyalty meant silence. Who thought choosing herself would make her the villain. I told her I was proud. I told her she didn't overreact. I told her that walking away wasn't giving up. It was finally showing up for herself. That afternoon, I lit a candle and read the letter out loud. Then I burned it. Because closure doesn't always come wrapped in a bow. Sometimes it comes in the quiet. Sometimes it comes when no one else is watching. And sometimes it comes when you stop waiting for someone to say sorry. And finally say enough. 2 months had passed. 60 days of silence from my end. No replies. No glances backward. Just small, steady steps forward. Matt, on the other hand, had gone from desperate emails to angry ones. The latest one read, "You're really going to throw away everything over one mistake." One mistake. Like all the lies, the gaslighting, the nights he came home and pretended to be tired while texting her under the covers, like that was just a misstep. A momentary lapse in judgment. Not a choice he made again and again. I didn't respond. Because I wasn't interested in explaining something I knew he didn't want to understand. The truth? He thought I'd always be there. And to be fair, I used to believe that too. I was the fixer. The peacekeeper. The "it's okay, I'll handle it" wife. Even when it wasn't okay. Even when it broke me. But now, I didn't need him to get it. I didn't need the apology he didn't know how to give. I had something better. Distance. And with that distance, I started noticing things I never had time to feel before. Like how peaceful my mornings were when I wasn't waking up to tension I couldn't name. Or how deeply I slept without the weight of wondering who he was really texting at night. One morning, while doing absolutely nothing but sipping coffee in my pajamas, I realized something. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not waiting for answers. Or closure. Or karma. I was done waiting. Matt hadn't changed. But I had. And that was more powerful than any revenge plan, any carefully drafted email, any gotcha moment. I wasn't chasing pain anymore. I was choosing peace. And let me tell you something. When a woman stops trying to prove her worth, stops explaining why she's hurt, stops begging to be understood, that's when she becomes dangerous. Not in a cruel way. In a free way. I think what hurt him most, more than the silence, more than the unread messages, was the realization that I wasn't angry anymore. Just indifferent. He expected rage. Tears. Screaming. Maybe a dramatic confrontation outside my apartment like some Netflix original. Instead, he got nothing. Because eventually, the pain burns itself out. And all that's left is clarity. I saw him once. Completely by accident. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and I was running errands, groceries, dry cleaning, normal life things. I stepped out of a store, and there he was, across the street, getting out of his car. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but like someone who hadn't slept right in weeks. Shoulders hunched. That confident walk replaced with hesitation. For a second, he looked right at me, and I just smiled politely. Not because I forgave him, not because I wanted him back, but because I didn't. And that moment, that smile, that lack of drama, it said everything. He started walking over. I turned and got in my car. I didn't speed off. I didn't slam the door. Just left. Later that night, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "You looked happy today." I missed that smile. I blocked it without replying. Because what he missed wasn't me. He missed the version of himself he could be when I was still loving him. Still covering for him. Still pouring from an empty cup so he wouldn't feel a drought. But he didn't just lose a wife. He lost the woman who always picked up the emotional slack. Who remembered the details. Who kept the foundation from cracking even when she was crumbling herself. And that's not something you get back with a few "I miss you" texts and a guilty conscience. That's gone. Because I'm not the same woman he left behind. I'm the woman who rebuilt herself. And this time, I'm unrecognizable. It came on a Sunday. Fitting, really. The kind of day that used to mean brunch and errands and lazy naps on the couch. Back when we still pretended we were happy. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. Maybe he'd finally given up. Maybe he'd realized silence speaks louder than any reply ever could. Then the knock. Soft. Hesitant. I looked through the peephole. It was him. I didn't open the door right away. I stood there for a minute, hand hovering over the doorknob, heart steady. Not racing. Not nervous. Just calm. When I did open it, he looked surprised. He always expected me to lead with emotion. But I was done being predictable. "Hey," he said. Voice rough, like he hadn't used it much lately. "Hi," I replied. That was it. He held something in his hand. A small envelope. "No pressure," he started. I wrote something. Thought maybe you'd want to read it." I didn't take it right away. "What's in it?" I asked. He blinked, caught off guard by the question. Maybe he thought I'd cry, or collapse into his arms, or beg him to come in. But I wasn't her anymore. "It's an apology," he said. "The real kind." I finally reached out and took the envelope. No promises. No thank yous. Just that. He stood there for a second longer, waiting. I said nothing. So he left. When I closed the door, I didn't open it right away. I made tea. I turned on some music. I took a shower. Because his apology was no longer urgent. Later that night, I sat down and opened it. It was handwritten. Pages of it. No excuses. "No, but you did this too." Just raw honesty. He talked about the affair. About the way he slowly stopped seeing me. About the resentment he never voiced and how it curdled into blame. He said, "I don't think I ever really saw how much I relied on your light until I noticed it wasn't shining on me anymore." He ended it with, "I know you're never coming back, but I needed you to know that I see it now. All of it. And I'm sorry." I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer. Not because I forgave him, but because it no longer needed to live on my chest. It could stay in a drawer where it belonged. A piece of history. A chapter closed. Because sometimes the apology comes. But by then, you've already left the room. People always ask the same thing after a breakup like mine. Do you still love him? And I think that's the wrong question. Love doesn't just disappear overnight. It fades, shifts, changes shape. And sometimes it doesn't even vanish. It just stops being enough. But do I miss him? No. I miss the version of me I was before him. Before I made myself smaller. Before I bit my tongue raw trying not to upset him. Before I excused the late nights and distant eyes, and the phone he always kept face down. I miss the woman who believed loyalty would be enough to keep someone honest. But him? I don't miss the apologies that never came until after the damage was done. I don't miss sleeping beside someone who made me feel lonelier than if I were alone. I don't miss being second in my own story. The truth is, I've made peace with the past. I've stopped trying to rewrite it or make sense of every detail. He cheated. He lied. He betrayed the one person who would have set herself on fire to keep him warm. That's not my burden to carry anymore. And forgiveness? Maybe that comes later. Maybe not. But letting go doesn't need to wait for forgiveness. Letting go just needs clarity. And I have that now. In the quiet mornings. In the sound of my own laughter coming back to life. In the way I decorate my space exactly how I want without second-guessing whether he'll roll his eyes at it. I don't hate him, but I don't miss him. And that, honestly, feels more powerful than rage ever could. Because healing isn't loud. It's silent. It's subtle. And it shows up in the most unexpected ways. Like sleeping through the night without crying. Or realizing you haven't checked their social media in weeks. Or finally, walking past their favorite coffee shop and not feeling like your chest might cave in. That's when you know. You're not surviving anymore. You're living. Some days, I still catch myself flinching at shadows that look like memories. Like hearing a song in a grocery store that we used to sing in the car. Like reaching for 2 mugs in the morning out of habit. Like passing by couples and wondering if they ever fear the silence between them will one day become permanent. Healing doesn't come wrapped in a bow. It's not a clean process. It's messy, unpredictable, and often painfully quiet. Some days, I feel like I've moved on. Others, I feel like I'm still unpacking the damage. But here's what I've learned. You don't have to be fully healed to know your worth. You just have to be awake enough to no longer settle for pain disguised as love. And that's where I am now. Not perfect, not unscarred, but awake. I wake up in a space that reflects me, not us. My books on the shelf, my plants on the sill, my laughter in the air. And when people ask, "Are you over him?" I say, I'm over that version of myself. The one who waited for text replies that never came. The one who apologized first just to keep the peace. The one who thought being chosen meant being valued. Now I choose me. Every single time. And if that makes me selfish in someone else's story, so be it. Because I've spent enough time being selfless in the wrong one. It was late. One of those nights when the world is quiet and your mind is anything but. I was scrolling aimlessly when his name lit up my phone. Just 5 words. Do you ever think about me? No hi. No context. No apology. Just that. And you know what? I stared at the message longer than I should have. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because a part of me, one I thought I'd buried, felt something again. Not love, not longing, just a flicker of all the things I wanted to say back, of all the truths I could have unleashed. I simply replied, sometimes, but not the way you hope. He didn't reply, and that silence? It spoke louder than anything he ever said while we were together. That was the thing with him. He always waited until he thought I was soft again, until I had healed just enough to reopen old wounds. But I wasn't that girl anymore. He was too late, not just to fix what he broke, but to understand that I'd stopped waiting for him to notice the pieces. He was a chapter, not the story. And this is a new book, one I write for myself. No co-authors, no edits for anyone else's comfort, just truth. And if he ever texts again, wondering if I still think of him, I'll smile, because maybe I will, but only as a lesson, never as a possibility. I stood in front of the mirror this morning, brushing my hair, when I realized something. I hadn't thought about him once all day, not out of avoidance, not because I was forcing myself to forget, but because I was just living. The sun was pouring through the window. My favorite playlist was humming low in the background. I had plans with friends later, real friends. The kind who listen, who see me. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt full. Not in the way love used to fill me, chaotic, conditional, heavy, but in the way peace sneaks in quietly, making a home in all the places where pain once lived. There was no grand finale, no big, dramatic closure, no confrontation where I finally won. Just space, just time, just me. Sometimes healing doesn't end with fireworks. It ends with laundry folded on a quiet Sunday. It ends with knowing your own coffee order by heart. It ends with waking up and not having to check your phone to see if you matter. And that's okay. That's more than okay. Because this isn't about him anymore. This never was. This is about her. The woman who stayed too long, who loved too hard, who broke quietly and rebuilt slowly. This is about the woman who now wakes up with peace in her chest and no more apologies on her tongue. This is how her story ends and how her life begins.